morning. How are you?
Very well, thank you. I can briefly say hi.
Hello, hi. Hi, Emmanuel. Hello, how you doing?
Very well, thank you. Good to see
Yeah,
everyone.
yeah.
You too.
Hey, Jacob. Hi, how are you? Hi, Farouk.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay.
I
All
hear
right.
you now.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kari. I'm an investor and CEO of the Atlantic Society. Joining me today is Farook Jamal, who is a fellow member and also an investor. Maybe a little outside of your generation, but Amy, you know this and you're a fan. Farook's also a founder of Pepe Jeans. And I mean, growing up in the 90s, 2000s, like who didn't own a Pepe Jeans?
Yeah, exactly.
All down to this man brings a world of knowledge both on the investment side but also how to really scale businesses at a global level. I mean, I grew up in Canada and we knew Pepe Jeans. Anyone I've spoken to from like the US, Europe, everyone knows of it. And 20 years on, everyone knows of it. So you could really imagine the kind of, Jacob, you'd mentioned credibility, this brand equity that was built and back in the day without any social media. So Farouk's a genius at, building businesses like that. We're here today because Amy and I, we were put in touch. What we want to do is bring to students an external point of view. On the campus, you've got a lot of people that are really experienced in the knowledge that they bring to their academics. However, what you lack sometimes because you're so siloed in your campus life is how the real world operates, the questions you get asked, and things like that. So what we're here to do is answer all of that. We can cover it all, in this short amount of time, but we aim to anyways. Today's topic, and I think it was kind of to get into your boot camp mode, is to validate idea generation and validation. It is so important. Like everyone wants to become an entrepreneur. Everyone wants to, then they think that, we're going to go raise money and that's that. And it's really not that easy. So it's really, really important to kind of do all the foundational work. And Jacob, throughout our talk, I'd love to hear kind of what aspect of the journey you're at currently. You said you're looking for credibility, but even before you get to that stage, there's so much homework that needs to be done, the foundations that need to be laid. So it would be really interesting to kind of see where you're at in your journey and if you had any specific questions along that side. We're not going to do any slide presentations. I want it to be very free flow. So if you have any questions, anything, let's dive into this. Farouk, do you want to add anything at all?
No, I liked your description of me as a genius. I'll buy that.
Building a brand, I think, for a B2C brand, the way you've, scaled a business, it's admirable to say the
Yeah.
least.
Yeah, I think we can cover that in some aspects of how some of the people here will have stories that will share with us, and perhaps I can share some of my stories on how scaling took place and what it took to grow the business. But perhaps, Kari, we can start with maybe where do you want to start specifically?
So, I wanted, like I said, like this to be a discussion between all of us, right? I have already a few points down that I'd like to cover. And what we could do is your experiences and my experiences, let's use them as case studies.
Excellent.
Let's go down the first one. So idea generation. I think one of the biggest things is when you think about an idea, you're dictated or you're really kind of shaped in your opinions and your decision making through what's happening in the market, right? So is there a need for something? Is there a market demand? And that really basically drives you to have and formulate an idea. Farouk, in your case, when you started Pepe Jeans, what exact moment was that?
Well, we started in retail, and I was told by one of my suppliers, Levi's not to name anybody, they were going to cease my supplies because they felt I was harming their brand. And they couldn't exactly tell me how, but I was harming their brand by discounting. So we took the steps to say, well, how difficult is it to make a pair of jeans? It's bloody difficult, we found out. We sort of embarked on a journey where we said, if we can't access the product from a brand, a manufacturer, why don't we make it ourselves? We would never have thought of this unless we were pushed into a situation that forced us to say, well, let's go make it ourselves. And that's probably how most founders start their journeys, to say, why doesn't this exist? Why is nobody doing this? And as Kari said, the thing that we look at as investors very, very critically in the beginning is to say, is there a problem here? Is there something that is worth solving? In our case, it was was our existence. We had 5 shops. We had to feed them. We had to put product in them. Wasn't get suppliers. So I had to go and make it ourselves without any knowledge. We didn't know how to make product. We didn't know how to design it. We didn't have anything. The necessity of doing something where you learn really quickly, you adapt, and you go with it, and you lose fear. And fear is one of the things that probably a lot of you founders have to deal with on a daily basis. It's a very, very internalized thing. It's a very important thing to face. But we kind of conquered it by having a group of us saying, well, we're going to do this. We're going to beat this. And that's how the brand actually came about. So we were, in fact, an accidental brand. We didn't set out on a journey to say, let's create this really fantastic, all passionate thing. That came over time. Then we fell in love with the idea of making the best possible product in the market, deliver the best service, get the best salespeople, get the best distribution, have the best supply chain. That evolved stage by stage, and that's part of the scaling process. But that was the start of the journey, basically.
Amazing. And so, see, for me, it was very different. I've started multiple businesses, all of them in existence till today, 10, 11, 12 years later. That's also something because I've never actually kind of been on the tech side of the business where you start a business to sell. I come from a very different generation, very different upbringing where we're actually meant to start businesses and they continue as family businesses. It's a very different mindset, right? But having said that, I started a business just because someone asked me to, and kind of accidental in that sense. And like Farook, it became intentional along the way. I started the Atlantic Society, and it's a business networking platform and investment club. It was started because I saw a need to actually connect both sides of the Atlantic. There's a lot of same activities that happen in the US, Canada, and the UK, Europe, Middle East, and beyond. However, there's very little communication between both sides. There's a lot of investment flow. There's a lot of money that's wanting to be invested and deployed from North America into the European market, but there's very little flow process and very little sort of platforms that exist in order to facilitate that. And that's what I started. It started with a group of friends. It started with my own portfolio companies that I invested in. And it basically started from that and started to grow. And now we're kind of sitting at 1,000 members and it's become like a legitimate business. Again, it was leveraging market trends. The trend here was that there was a lot of money that was sitting that wanted to come to the European side. There were a lot of businesses scaling in the Europe, UK markets that wanted to go to the US, but there was no one actually facilitating that flow. And that's where the demand I saw that came about this. You know, another factor that really drives idea generation, that drives market demand, aside from just a gap in the market, is minorities and underrepresented communities. For me, being a minority female founder, I saw that that was a gap as well, because there was no one really, you know, we talk about this all the time. There isn't enough funding for women female founders, especially from minority groups. So for me, it was really also important to be a voice and be a platform to provide that opportunity to founders, especially underrepresented founders from communities that have no access to knowledge, network, or capital. And that became the basis of starting the Atlantic Society. So I can't stress enough, when we're talking about idea generation, it can't be just something that you've dreamt about. Like there has to be something, like Farook said, there has to be a problem solving there. There has to be some sort of a demand in the market there, right? There will be other steps where you assess how large that demand is and what you are able to make of it. And, you know, that kind of is a good segue into the second point, which is market research. A lot of people kind of get into something because they feel they need it without actually doing proper research, whether or not to see if there is actual demand for it. And oftentimes, you know, if there's an actual problem, that is a problem faced by an entire community, whether that is through ethnicity, through gender, or religion, whatever it might be, there usually means there is demand that needs to be looked into further, right? Like there's usually legs to stand on that, to explore that further. But one of the biggest things I find is people don't know when to stop. Yes, you might have initial demand. There is something there. But at what point do you have to abandon that idea when you realize it's not scalable? You can operate small businesses and that's totally fine. But if you're looking for an investment from an investor, you need to know if that's scalable and what the investor is actually investing in. So a lot of the times when you're doing market research, you have an idea. Is it something generic? You know, someone around the corner can pick that up, or is there an actual IP attached to your idea? Because the investor wants that IP. That's what they're really investing in. And that's really the focus over here, supply and demand, and also evaluating the viability of this once you conduct a market research to see where the viability lies and where the supply demand is and whether or not your IP can sustain that growth. The third one goes into customer validation, because when we're talking about all of this, you might have a great idea, there might be a need, but how big is that need? And I think a lot of people misjudge and misevaluate this particular point, especially when when you start your business, everyone's talking about how this is your baby, and it's difficult to let that go. Difficult to then abandon something if you see that there isn't enough validation from customer. A lot of the times people don't know how to really accurately even validate your idea. Some of the things you could do is, we talked about this, look at the supply demand, look at the viability of your product, look at your customer needs. That could happen through surveys, that could happen through feedback. The key there is, when you gather all this data, how do you collate this in a meaningful manner that can then guide and inform the decisions that you're making in the future? Because a lot of the times what people do is they are not able to collate that data and really interpret that in a way that could actually drive your business making decisions. I think this is something where, for students especially, or newly grads that are starting their businesses right out of university, I've spoken to so many students, I find that's where the biggest kind of stopgap is in the system here, because they lack real life experiences in a job. And a job, basically, what it does is it gives you the skills where you can make informed decisions. You're answerable to someone, you're accountable to someone, and that actually makes you be able to make better decisions, because what you're doing is you're looking at your cost benefit analysis, you're looking at your time resources spent, and you're calculating everything. And I can't stress this enough. You must calculate everything as an opportunity cost. There's always a cost attached to anything that you're doing and anything you're not doing. And what you really need to assess is where that importance lies. A lot of that comes through experiences. It's okay to then fail. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to pick up yourself and be like, okay, I made a mistake. Hopefully it's not an expensive one, but you get up and you move on. What we also need to do is accept that it's okay to do that. I've made so many. In fact, I was last night speaking at a panel. I mean, we're all adults here, so I could drop the F-bomb. The entire night was called the Fuck Up Night. It's a global franchise. They exist in over like 36 cities around the world. And what you do is you invite people to talk about their failures. And failure has such a negative connotation, but it's only a setback if you make it one, right? But a lot of the times what I find, you have a great idea. I don't think businesses fail because there isn't money, because there's a ton of money out there. I don't think businesses fail because of your model, because models can be tweaked. I see the most failure happening because there isn't enough customer validation done, because you have wrongly assessed what the customer needs are and how great those needs are for scalability.
I think this is very, very central to the whole entrepreneurial journey. What Kari is referring to is something that you'll cover in your coursework. It's product market fit. It's where the product and market come together. When you have product market fit is when the market accepts that your idea or service is needed. They're willing to pay for it on a repetitive basis. If it's not repetitive, you haven't achieved product market fit. To get that, you need validation. You have to do a lot of research. You have to go into the market. You have to talk to loads of people. So let's talk about some very big examples of product market fit, how they've been achieved, and why one way or another we all subscribe to that. So if you take Apple, for example, I'm completely part of the Apple ecosystem. I'm on the cloud. I buy the music. I buy the streaming TV. I use their iPhones. I'm completely enslaved by this. If I want to move, I would have to start a new life, basically, on Android. I wouldn't be the same. So what they've achieved is something they've identified in a consumer like me. He will need all these services. How do we provide that? They started by giving us the phone. The phone was a communication mode. Then they went on to data. Then they went on to streaming. Then they went on to music. So the App Store was the first of its kind. Then they started building some amazing products. We've been thinking, like, why haven't they done VR yet? And they're very patient. They've actually said, we will do it when we've perfected it. We don't want to be Oculus. We don't want to be any of these people that have tried it and it looks funny and it doesn't work. So they've made a really sexy product commercial, and it's not cheap. It's a $4,000 product. It's not cheap, but you'll see the demand. The same with the watch. So the watch now has become not to tell time, but there are benefits to health. So it tracks everything that you do. It allows you to communicate as well as track your health. This is a complete ecosystem. It's demand driven. People want this. They provide you for it. Amazon is another thing. Started out with books. They actually started selling washing machines after that. I mean, Amazon can deliver and sell you anything. What is it? It's the perfect kind of logistics network. It doesn't have its own product, but it brings people together on a platform that is so efficient. So if I want to buy anything, I go to Amazon first, because I know if they say it's Thursday, 4 o'clock, it's going to be here at 4 o'clock. That is an amazing feat
Mhm.
because it saves me time to stop hanging around waiting. Is DPS going to come? Is Royal Mail going to come? Is this going to happen? Kind of supersedes all delivery systems. Okay. So we've got examples, real life examples of how these businesses operate. It's what we call demand market pull. The market pulls you in. They say, we want this from you. And what Kari's been stressing is unless you have that, unless you can show there is a customer who says, I love your product, I can't live without it, I need it now, I'm willing to pay for it, I'll go on a subscription model, I'll pay you whatever you need. But that only happens after you've done a ton of work, and I mean a ton of work, establishing that that is precisely once you have, let's say, what we call a minimum viable product, you now have to tweak it. You have to keep getting it better and better and better. Therefore, when iPhone upgrades that come up on the iOS system, I don't use Android, so I suspect they have the same. I'm going like, what's the difference? Like, I don't know. I've downloaded 16.4. Does it make a difference to my performance? I really don't know. But they keep doing it and I'm subject to it. So I'm going like, there must be a reason. Tesla do it with their cars. It's done, it's just remotely. Tech is working in ways to improve performance. They don't come and ask you, hey, do you need an upgrade? No, they just do it and you're part of it. That only happens when they're constantly asking the question, what do you need as a customer? To go to Jacob's earlier kind of intro about the cybersecurity part, it's such an important part of tech now. It is so underrated and undermanaged that you see security breaches happening the whole time. Now, why wouldn't a major corporation put tons of money to protect its data? It's the most valuable asset it has. Yet you hear with regularity, they got breached. They don't know how much data got lost. It's all on the dark web. I suspect one day we'll all wake up and will have been hacked one way or another. But this is all about doing the best for your customer. You have to be customer centric. If you're not, you don't have a business.
Mhm.
Pepe was a very good example of we treated the product, the customer, the market very differently from our competitors because we weren't cheap at the time when we came to the market. Fortunately, my partners and I, we weren't price driven. We were quality driven. We were saying, we'll make this product because this is what we believe in. We have conviction that this product is what the market deserves. It's what the customer needs. They'll be willing to pay a price only if we deliver the product at the right quality that we're charging them for. And nobody ever picked up the phone and said to me, hey, I think that your product sucks. It's overpriced. It's useless. I wasn't scared of getting a negative call because I never expected one and I never got one, thankfully. But this is what is founder's journey. You have to be obsessed with the customer. You have to be obsessed with the problem. And if you're not, you don't have the passion. You're not going to cut it. And like Kari said, if there is no market demand for it, it could be the best idea in the world. It just won't fly. The market tells you what's needed, what's right, and they validate you. You don't validate your own ideas. The customer validates your ideas.
Absolutely. And, I think it's a great point to then also kind of refine, iterate the concept, deviate from your initial idea, because that flexibility is really needed to create your business model. That business model will then drive what you're doing next. And many times people just don't know when you're first starting out. Like I went through business school, my undergrad was in business. What you learn in your textbooks is just so different when you have to really apply to something in the real world. And when you go to apply that, no one is looking at Maslow's hierarchy of needs or what's the other stuff like, Kotler, marketing genius. While you can apply those principles, they're just kind of outdated for the 21st century, right? Not everything is applicable. And by no means am I want to downplay what you learn in universities because I think they're the fundamentals. But I think what you really need to do is connect yourself with a community outside, have your mentors, have people that are also helping you along this journey, because you can't just be in your own head, because everything then you say to yourself makes sense because you justify it in that manner. I think when you have your business model, it's absolutely imperative that you actually have someone to also talk you through what the business model approach should be. There are key elements that need to be defined in this. A lot of the times you have great idea, there's a market need, but what people just don't understand is how to monetize that properly. that's where a business model is really, really important, because once you outline everything on a piece of paper or however way you like to work, what you really need to know is how to monetize something. Like recently we did a pitch event. The guy's a genius. He's a GP in a fund. He used to be a venture capitalist. Farook just talked about the dependency of what Apple has created amongst its customers. That dependency is what drives their sales, right? And this guy, he acquired the rights of Siri back in 98 and early 2000 and actually dumped it, sold it at a loss, because back then no one was really interested in Siri. All the latest generations of iPhones hadn't come. So you can imagine, like in Silicon Valley, he is super, super connected, acquired the rights to Siri. So owns Siri, something so small but integral in all of our lives now. At the end of his pitch, while he was pitching his business, everyone's like, well, how do you make money? Someone even as experienced at that in his late 50s, early 60s, maybe, even at that stage, he wasn't able to really fully understand how to distill his idea into a revenue making machine. Or maybe he did, but he wasn't able to communicate that. Half your battle is lost if you don't learn how to communicate to an investor in elevator pitches for sure, but even, at a pitch where you have 15, 20 minutes where you get a meeting with someone. And I think this is what your boot camp will also like walk you guys through to the end, is when you are in front of an investor, you need to be able to convince them in that short amount of time that you can make them money. But more than that, you need to convince them that you're able to make money as well. So you need to actually show to them what your revenue making model is. And I think that's integral. That's something that you need to be able to show to someone. And with your business model, that's something that you will learn over time. You need that flexibility where you're able to make the changes, and you need to be agile and you need to be resilient. I can't stress enough how much this is needed. You need to kind of have a thick skin, because everyone's going to come in and tell you like, this is not going to work, this is going to work. But you need to also be able to assess that. At the end of the day, be agile and be quick in making any of the changes required. Farook, how many times have you had to pivot?
Countless. You never start with the original idea. There are thousands of iterations that have to take place.
I organized a pitch event where this founder was presenting, and he had this amazing idea. At the Atlantic Society, we come together as a syndicate, or we invest as angel investors. So we're not a VC, we're not an investment outfit. However, he sat there to a room full of investors that were typically funds, and he was basically saying, this is the end of the VCs. Like, you can't ask audience money and say that basically I'm also killing your jobs. And, so it's being, it was like counterproductive. So, I mean, his tool was phenomenal. It was deep tech. So a lot of people didn't understand it to begin with. Nobody really got it. But then you're presenting and you're pitching to a room full of VCs and saying basically that your job's going to be obsolete because of my product. Why would you invest in them? So that's another thing. Know your audience. Know who you're pitching to, know who you're selling to. And I think that basically is, also the end of the lesson over here, because at the end of the day, you could do all the work, but if you don't know how to monetize that, and then to an audience, you're saying you're pitching to the wrong audience, you're pitching the wrong product to the audience, you're telling them that your job's going to be obsolete, but hey, before you go become unemployed, just give me a lot of cash. It just doesn't work like that. He's standing up there asking for 3 million. It just doesn't work like that. I can't tell you guys, I really introduced him to so many different investors and nothing came of it. Nothing came of it.
The gentleman, the founder that Kari mentioned, who was pitching at that event, you would not believe the depth of experience he had as a venture capitalist, an entrepreneur. I mean, deep knowledge in tech. And yet, when somebody said, but how do you actually make money? He wasn't able to convince anybody in the audience that there was a model that was actually profitable. For investors, as investors, our last question will always be the path to profitability. How are you going to actually get there? What is it going to get you across the line where you become cash positive? So the three things I would encourage everybody to learn at this stage, even if you don't consider yourself an accountant, well, you are in a way, because you balance your own budgets every month, you know how much you spend, you know how much goes out in rent, all of that. You're doing accounting in a very informal way. But in business, you're going to have to learn to be comfortable with numbers. And a lot of people say, well, I'm not an accountant. I don't like numbers. If you don't know your numbers, and I don't like to say to the CFO, well, how do your budgets work? I like to address that to the CEO, to the founder. I know everybody says, well, I'm not an accountant. I leave the numbers to some. No, you have to be very familiar with your numbers. You have to know them inside out. Why? Because an investor is, his last question to you is, do you understand the following things? Do you understand how to make cash flow? Do you know what the P&L is? Do you know how to read a balance sheet? These are very fundamental things, and I would encourage you, please try and get these basics. They don't take a lot of time to learn, to absorb, and be familiar with, but they will help you enormously to understand your numbers. When you're doing forecasting at later stages, at this stage, it's not that relevant, but I do like to have a feel for the founder's understanding of numbers. And a lot of people are kind of very fuzzy. I lose interest when they start saying, well, I'll get back to you, or I don't have them with me. Going back to what Kari was saying, it's about, in the end, is about monetization. How are you going to make money? Show me how the numbers work. You can say, look, I'm not that good at accounting. You can have somebody in your team who's better at it, but you'll be the one that they'll be addressing that question to. And you have to be at least familiar with the top line numbers, because the detailed ones they can address to your CFO at some point. But in the beginning, early stages of business, you can't hire a financial person. You're going to have to do everything yourself. From day one, get into and understanding numbers. They are critical to investors having confidence in your ability to be familiar with them, to talk about them authoritatively. And as the business grows, you can pass the detailed stuff to somebody else, but you have to know, are you on the path to profitability? The biggest example we can think of in the tech world was Uber. When they went public, they were not profitable. What happened was the share price, it floated at about $24, $25 or something like that, $40. It's probably barely above that. That's 4 or 5 years after going public. So the public markets punish you if your numbers don't add up. In the private markets, venture capital puts money in. They put about $18, $20 billion into Uber before they went public. It was fine because they did their own valuation. But when you go public, the market determines, what are your sales like? What's your profitability like? Uber could never show a profitable year. So consequently, the share price reflected that. It's only recently, I think, they turned their first quarter number that was profitable. Amazon wasn't profitable for 10, 15 years after they went public. But investors have faith in the concept. You don't have that luxury as a startup. You have got to say to somebody with confidence that in 3 years, this business is going to be profitable, if not earlier. Kari and I, as angel investors, we like to see a 24-month period where we can see a path to break even, if not making profit. But you certainly stop losing after 24 months. That's when the early stage investment has come in. You've developed a product, you found product market fit, your business model is now kind of taking shape. You're beginning to understand that this can now generate an income after all costs and expenses have been paid. There is something left at the bottom line to not only meet expenses and things, but to reinvest into the business. This is what investors are looking at, because when that happens, the value of the investment increases and they become more determined to pour more money into your business because you're in an upward trajectory. You're going somewhere. And I think these are things at business school aren't very evident because it's an investor arena that's very opaque at times. You don't really get to understand the investor's mindset. But what Kari and I want to try and do is to kind of get you to understand the investor lens is very different to the founder lens. The founder is only obsessed with this great idea. I'm going to do this. No, I want to know as an investor, have you got a great idea? Have you figured out the market? Have you got a team that's experienced enough to pull it? Will you execute it? Is there a potential to exit the business? And another thing that's creeping or is now very dominant part of your startup's ideas is how do you incorporate environmental social governance into your business? If you don't do it from day one, you'll never do it. It is a question that a lot of investors are very keen on addressing to say, I want to invest in businesses that have social governance as a core pillar of their foundation.
Absolutely. And everything that you've just said actually goes back to my point about business model. You figure out your business model and how you want to monetize things once you put a business plan together. A business plan will also highlight what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are. According to that, maybe you decide to go get a co-founder. Maybe you decide to get an advisor who will beef up the areas that you're weaker at. But all of this will basically highlight what you need to work on. I cannot stress enough the importance of having the right networks, going to industry events, building your network, because I think that's what the most essential part in all of this is. You can't do this on your own. You need a solid network to get about doing this, because that's how you'll meet the people. That's how you'll make connections. One introduction can lead to another. And you just don't know, because Jacob, tell us again what your startup is all about.
So basically, I'm looking to sell fantasy maps. So basically, a fantasy map's about fictional locations. So I'm hoping to draw the attention of people in the gaming community, because what I've gathered so far is quite a sizable community, particularly in people who make these maps for campaigns like Dungeons and Dragons. So I'm hoping to get a few connections with people in that sort of area. There's a big freelance community out there as well.
Can you tell me what problem you're solving specifically?
So basically, in the fantasy idea, I think that there's a big issue, especially in the publishing scene, because while there's a lot of Dungeons and Dragons going on, there's currently a lack of fantasy maps in the modern age. So what I'm hoping to do is take my idea out, for instance, illustrations of modern maps, and basically link in modern ideas with fictional worlds, and that's what I've managed to find so far from my idea. So
as a novice D&D player, I can absolutely validate that there is a problem. The sort of barrier to entry, you kind of have the imagination, but it's having the route map, and it's having a sort of, this is where we can go. This is what the landscape looks like. You're driving it as a participant, but we need to put some limitations on this. So here is a map to show you how you can navigate to these locations. And then you can then use your imagination to develop that into a richer thing. But you need the seeds, you need the sort of guidance to be able to connect you into that. It is a problem, definitely. I wouldn't necessarily know anything about what the scope of that problem is, but I certainly can validate that, yes, there is a problem. There's a want to engage, there's an enthusiasm to go engage, but excuse me, there can sometimes be a limit on imagination. Jacob, well done.
Jacob, I think you found a co-founder there.
Yeah. Or a mentor or an advisor.
Or advisor.
Absolutely. I think it's very cool. The idea of putting that together does sound very exciting.
yeah, because I've been chatting with Amy Volker about that, and I'm trying to have fun.
And the industry right now, I mean, talked about idea generation and look at what the emerging trends and demands are. I mean, the gaming industry is just booming, and so much money is being put into it. How far along are you in your journey right now?
I've managed to get connected up with somebody in the publishing industry, because there's a publishing business in Stowmarket, and they also think that there's a big demand, but they're currently missing someone who's looking to illustrate fantasy adventures. So that's what I'm hoping to solve with my idea. So I'm hoping that over time I can develop this into something really interesting for everybody to enjoy. And
very cool.
Are there any other kind of ideas out there that people can throw out that we can have a group discussion on, similar to what Jacob's just described to us?
So I've got two questions here. First one is, Farook mentioned that the expectation is about 24 months break-even period. So I wanted to ask, is that for you as an investor, or is that the general expectation, for most angel investors or VCs when they want to invest in a business? Is that kind of what they look like? I mean, what they look out for, rather? That's the first one. So the second one is, I've heard Farook talk about product market fit, demand market pool, minimum viable products, and all of that. So an attempt to achieve all of that, at what point or how much of your business model has to change before you realize that, oh no, this isn't working?
I'll take the first part, and Kari can answer the MVP market pool better than I can. The 24-month period, Emmanuel, is really something that I consider a business to be able to show me that over a 24-month period, they've been able to establish some sort of revenue, that they've got their costs in line. So let's say you're not going to be profitable, but you're on the path to profitability. That you can say to me, at 24 months, my cost to expense ratio is this, but look, over another 12-month period, I'm definitely going to go over this. So it's showing me that you're thinking seriously about how you're going to reach that. If you are still losing money, there doesn't seem to be a way that you can demonstrate to me that you're going to A, increase sales, lessen your losses, or have a better control over expenses. Then I'm struggling with the business model. Then I'm struggling wanting to see how this can be a profitable business. Because if you don't put profitability ahead, or let's say on par with product market fit, then it becomes an issue where you're working towards product market fit, but you're losing more and more money, and you're going to the investor on a regular basis. And at some point, the investor will have this question: when will you be profitable, Emmanuel? I give 24 months to founders as a target. It doesn't mean that they're necessarily going to hit that, but I'd like to see that they're close to it. I have seen businesses that have had 12-month cycles where they're profitable within 12 months. Great stuff. It happens far and few between, so I'm not being unrealistic by saying within 24 months, I think is a reasonable time to assume that you're getting there. You may not quite be there, but you have to show me that you're getting there. You're close to it.
I just want to add something else actually to Farouk's point as well, Emmanuel. Yes, a lot of that is a very subjective opinion, especially for angel investors. But if you were to look at a more general market sentiment, it really depends on the fund. So funds typically look at 3 to 5 year exit. If you're looking at an angel investor, it is a little bit shorter than that. But even then, Farouk's only talking about breaking even. You're not talking about a sale. You're not talking about an exit. And that could be typically, it could be 5 to 7 years. You're pretty much going to be committed to that long to actually see anything happen. There's also time frames. So within the first year, you would want to do your SEIS and EIS. I think within 2 to 3 years of starting, you need to be able to get to your Series A. Farouk, would you say that's about the right time? About 2 to 3 years of Series A?
Yes, 3-year cycle for Series A is a definite KPI.
Yeah. And, depending on what the investor and who came in at what stage, then you can assess and work backwards as to what their exits could be. Because typically funds would come in at the Series A, C plus or Series A. They're looking at a 3 to 5 year. Beyond Series A, you're looking at more of the bigger funds, because private equity won't come in until maybe B or C rounds. Once you have B and C, it becomes a global concept. Then it's no longer something that's just contained to one country. Hopefully that gives you a little bit also more idea, but definitely breaking even within the first 24 months to actually even see any of your money coming back. This actually really ties in with your MVP fit question, because at what point do you tweak the idea was your question. Is there an option to also abandon it? That is also, I think that's something that needs to be addressed. If it's not working, what you also actually have is this moral obligation to your investors, right? Because at what point do you think that I just keep taking in money and trying to prove what I'm trying to do? If it's not working, I think you need to have a very frank conversation and actually have, like Farouk said, KPIs. If you're not able to meet those within certain timelines, I think it's time to move on. If you've got the runway to actually work it out, you're in a very fortunate position, because then I think what you need to do is really kind of put the brakes on and reassess the idea. So one of our founders, for example, started off a business. It was to provide a platform for founders for their insurance and mortgage. Now it's become an entire community. It's become a SaaS business. And, she started off something really different, but what she did was she was able to apply her tech into something completely different. That's another way to pivot as well, right? Going back to your question, do you tweak it or abandon it? I would say that's really something that you need to be self-disciplined on, because you're going to have to put in the right timelines and KPIs attached. There has to be benchmarks and there has to be goalposts that you're reaching. If you're not able to do that, give yourself a hard deadline and move on. But in order to do that, you're going to have a very, very open and frank discussion with your own self. And I think this is when it's really important to actually have a good set of advisors and mentors around you. Find them early. The objective of this was to find an idea, how to generate an idea, how to validate it. Basically, you want to get all of this done and get ready. This basically takes you to everything that we talked about, takes you to everything until you get in front of an investor and pitch to them. You need all of this in place. You need your emerging markets. You need to find the gap market, the niche that you want to focus on. You need to do market research. You need customer validation. And then you need the right networks building around you, your mentors, people that can guide you. And then what you also need to do at that point is figure out your business model, how to monetize this, what your revenue generating streams are, and overall apply that into a business plan that highlights your strengths and weaknesses, and then really tackle that. Not an easy feat and not a short-term view. You're really going to have to be in this for the long game. Farouk, anything to add there?
It's a journey. There's rough seas. You don't have a compass. You don't have food. Your little boat's taking on water. You don't have oars, and you've got rough seas in front of you. You're going to be out in the middle of the sea without any help, without any kind of resources, but you're going to have to find your way to the island that you know is on the other side, and you will hit armor waters at some stage. It happens, but you've got to go through a horrendous journey. It's boot camp for founders. It's terrible. You get up every day to get smacked 12 times around your face. That's what this is. If you don't buy into that and you don't accept that, you will not survive this journey. Not to be negative, but this is about resilience. Qualities that we look for in founders. I like to see humility. I like to see humor. I like to see hard work. And I like to see an honorable person, meaning they admit when they're wrong. They can take credit for when they're right. They share it with the team. These are the qualities that are going to make you into great founders. Look, not everybody is an Elon Musk, nor should they be, because that is probably not the best example of a human being ever. Okay, we know what he's capable of, we know what he's done, but do I want to have a drink with him? Probably not. Our attitude towards founders are looking at people like yourselves, aspirational, they're passionate, they're working on something that believes important, and they're going to find a way around this. But then you're going to need help, and capital isn't the only thing that gets you there. You will need a good team. You will need to be good at recruitment, building teams, finding a mission, finding your purpose. All these things are really, really important. And the things that we also look for in early stage businesses is, what sort of a culture are you establishing in your company? What is your culture all about? What drives the people to join you? If there's an offer between you and somebody that's paying more, why would they come to you? Why would they work for you? So as a founder, you've got to be that person that they'll take a bullet for, that they'll kind of say, I want to come work for you. I don't care about the money. I don't care what you're offering me, but I want to be with you because I share your passion. I share your vision. I want to support that, and I want to grow with you. And that is what the founder's role is. The founder's role is to build a team, get the people around him totally motivated, on the same page. And then his main task is recruitment, find distribution, and build sales. That's a tough role. Normally, if you're going to go into a job, you only have one thing to do. You're either sales, you're either marketing. You don't have to worry about the payroll. You don't have to worry about customers. As a founder, you're going to be doing everything, and you have to be good at everything. You may think, well, I'm not good at recruiting. I'm not. Well, you know what? You're going to have to be. And you can be if you start being open to these ideas about being good at things that you don't think you're good at. It's the most passionate journey you'll ever take in your life. It's the best thing you'll ever do. We have founders that have come to us, Kari and I will tell you, that come from big corporate backgrounds. They've had successful careers. They've been in investment banking or some big corporate job, and they've left it. Now they're saying, I want to be an entrepreneur. Well, the transition isn't that simple. The best entrepreneurs come from a very early age, when you have almost a lack of fear of failure. It's the lack of fear of failure that drives best founders at a very early stage. When you're a lot older, you have a lot at risk. You have a family, you have a mortgage. You're saying to your family, I'm going to give all this up. I'm going to be an entrepreneur. And normally the answer is, are you mad? What are you doing? Why are you throwing all this away? The road to entrepreneurship is kind of very weird. There are no boundaries. It just works in a very, very funny way. And you have to be convinced that this is what you want to do. What Kari said, you have to abandon projects when they're not working. You have to be really tough with yourself and say, this isn't working because I haven't put enough time and energy into it. This is not working because this solution is not worth solving for. So any conversation with us always starts with meeting a founder to say, what are you solving for? Why do you think you see a problem when others are not seeing problems? We think founders identify niches and areas that people don't know exist. That's your strength. That is your competitive advantage. You've seen something other people are not seeing. Jacob, I honestly couldn't tell you what's that map you call?
Fantasy maps.
Never heard of it. I thought it was something you buy in Disneyland, okay?
Yeah, fictional. Yeah.
So now I'm being educated on what a fantasy map is. And Nicholas saying, hey, you know what? We do need it.
But this is why it's so important for the real world to be connected to university students, because all the emerging trends, everything gets started there. We don't know what's happening. We don't know what the next gen is talking about, what they're interested in, until we connect with students.
Right.
Like Farook, like even me, I know that the gaming industry is booming. There's a lot of money going in, and there's a lot of different pitch decks that I've looked at recently, but never in this capacity.
Mm-hmm.
Even, if you and I had a pitch deck like this, what we're going to have to do is kind of go out there and figure out who is in this industry to guide us through this, right? Because we wouldn't know.
Well, we'd call Nicola.
Yeah. Oh, Nicola, exactly, right? Sorry, Monica, do you want to jump in with your question?
This is a silly question, yeah? In the case of we find an investor, how does it work? Is there any any frame, anything to follow? How does it work? Is there any chance to give a share of the business, right?
Yes.
Possible? Yes.
Yes.
Possible.
You could raise money in different manners. You could go to a family friend and borrow money. That is a typical loan. You will agree to a predetermined interest rate to pay them back and whatever schedule you want to pay them back on. You could do a similar thing with a bank, probably higher rate against a collateral or whatever it is that they ask you for. And then you could go to another investor and say that, can you give me 100,000 in exchange for 10% of my business? Now, also with 100,000 at 10% of your business, you have valued your business at about £1 million. So
Okay.
that is what your value of your business is now. In the scenario where everything is going really well, you're getting sales in, you're getting everything. And for example, you sold that 10% of your business to the investor for 100,000. So whatever the per share value of that ends up being, depending on how many shares you have. For simplicity's sake, each share costed £1, worth 10% of it. You have a phenomenal year. Your business obviously gains valuation. It's worth more as your sales go up. So for example, now your share value, similar to what Farook was talking about earlier, these are not public markets. They don't get published, but they operate the same way. Say it's worth £3. And now if you want to sell it, either you sell it back to the founder as an investor, I could sell it back to the founder, or you might want to go out, raise more money at a higher valuation. And then the previous investor has an option to sell his shares or her shares back to the new investor or to the founder. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. So basically, it all depends of the agreement that we can do with the founder.
Yes, so there's typical frameworks in place to answer your question where it operates this way, and it's all negligible because at the end of the day, you set the price for your business, depending on what the current activities in the business are.
I think that's how it operates. But Monica, do you want to share basically a little bit more about your business and how much you want to raise? And perhaps we can get a little bit more specific in how it might work. Would that help you?
Yes. Well, this is a project that was forgotten in the drawer because this was all my dissertation was about this project that I would like to do. There is a huge gap in the market in Ipswich. In Ipswich, in the surrounded areas, there is no any site for like bring the community together for Latin culture. I did my market research during my dissertation. In the end, after the dissertation, I did my business plan. In my positive mind, I think it will be a great thing for Ipswich. There is nothing in Ipswich, there is nothing in Colchester, and according to my market research, the target market will be 30 plus. The findings they were that the people would love to have this here. Many people, they have to go to London and spend around 800 and 1,000 pounds per weekend to have something like this.
So it would mean a facility, a place, a venue, which would
Yes.
offer all this. So you're basically talking about getting into a venue which would offer food, music, entertainment, classes,
Yes.
all these things, right? So you're
Yes.
saying you would want to raise money for this venture, which is going towards building a specific Latin orientated venue where they can access all these things. Is that what you want to build? Is that your
Yes.
business? Basically, there is a demand for this. Why? Because of a Latin community in these areas, or is the demand also from people who are non-Latin but are
Yes.
interested in the culture? So
Yes.
is that
Yes. The demand is also from people from British or any other nationality. There is a big demand.
So you're saying people have to go to London, right, to experience this? What sort of venues are these? Where would I go to in London to experience this?
There is a place in Norwich, but
Not very good.
yeah, not the same. In London, we have much more choice.
Do you have any idea of what it might cost to build this, to do this?
Yes, I have.
And is it something that you can do yourself partly, or do
No.
you have to raise money?
I can't do this on my own.
Okay. So this is not a business that exists. So there is nothing, Kari, that we can put a valuation on. It is just attracting investors on the basis that there is a demand for this. And to set it up and get it going will take at least a couple of years to establish itself and create a brand around it. This is a hospitality business, really, right?
Yes. Yes.
Actually, it could be a hospitality tech business.
Yes.
What I'm thinking the way this could work is you actually have a platform where you offer various activities, and that's how you start. All you're doing is only focusing on, and I don't know what your business model here is, and I might be completely changing it and, turning it on its head, but hear me out. You're from Ipswich. There's someone else from Norwich, you said. There's someone else from York. Hypothetical kind of like discussion purposes here. Let's say you start with these three cities: Norwich, York, and Ipswich. You have a platform, ideally website and an app that you've built where you have packages. So for example, in Ipswich, what you do is you've got, a weekend plan, for example, in a month. So in a month, for example, what you do is you offer something out of Ipswich, you offer something out of York, and you offer something out of Norwich. So you have three activities in this month, and you can actually probably do this without having any investor on board, by the way, because the first thing what you want to do is be able to do anything without any external money. And that's how you could just try this out. Think of an activity. So you said a hotel, this, that, why can't you get a group together, contact a hotel to get a group rate, get a restaurant together to plan activities. There's so many Latin restaurants over here that do like salsa classes and a dinner. You could leave Ipswich, say at 9:00 at a meeting point where you hire a coach bus, which is a couple of £100 for the entire bus of people. And why don't you start something small like that and trial it out and see if you have any takers?
Right. That's a good idea.
And actually, that's something that you could start with Facebook group, which is very responsive with something like this. You don't actually need an investor to do this. Why don't you contact a hotel in London and see what group rates you can get? Secure the rate first. Contact a restaurant to see if they could do dinner and like salsa classes, especially if you're focused on the Latin angle. But next month you could focus on something that's Moroccan themed. The month after that, you could focus on something that is, I don't know, very Japanese focused. And you can create entire themes like this. And this is how you'll build your customer base.
Okay, that's a very good idea. That's a very good idea.
And just put it out there. And if you want your MVP, get a group of friends to try that out with. Get a group of friends where you have like 5 or 7 people that you fill up. And that's not something that you need an entire coach bus on. There's smaller vans that you could hire. Get a meeting point schedule for say 9 a.m. You come into London, you check into your hotel. There's a little bit of sightseeing and you can include that. But beyond that, what you could do is organize that dinner, and the next day people leave again after breakfast. And it just doesn't have to be Latin, but what you're doing is you're introducing these on a cultural level. So why not expand this out into Moroccan theme, a Japanese theme? I mean, there's so much you can do in this because London offers all of that to you.
You could have a salsa evening in a hotel in Ipswich. Go to the best hotel in Ipswich,
Absolutely.
advertise it and call Ipswich, all the neighboring towns,
Absolutely.
and have the first salsa evening where it's only Latin music, and even the food. I mean, you don't have to go crazy and offer a huge variety of Latin food, but it's easy to get somebody to make simple dishes that people can have at the venue. But that way you're establishing demand. It's what we talked about earlier. Is there a demand for this product? Is there a demand for this product? Are people interested in this culture? And they go, oh, this never happened here before. And it's close, it's at home. From that, you can branch out, like Kari says, theme it out into other nationalities, other cultures, because now you've got the formula. I would imagine that there are Arab people in around northwest, northeast of England who miss that and be going, oh, I can go to Ipswich, I can go here, I can go wherever. Out of this, what we're saying is business ideas and generation of ideas don't have to be centered around one single idea. Hopefully, Monica, we've sort of given you an insight into some ways in which you can bring your idea to life without bringing an investor in necessarily. You can organize, you can go to any hotel in your vicinity and say, if I want to plan an evening with 100 people, how much does the food cost? How much does the venue hire cost? And this is the theme of the night. You can plan out your cost first, advertise it, see what a response you get. And from that, go stage by stage, little by little. But what you're doing is validation of your concept. That is, people that are willing to pay money to come in and do this. It's a great thing to bring different cultures to other places. London isn't the be all and end all, okay? It's not where life exists only. It's in all pockets of the UK.
Farook has such a great point there, because Ipswich has proximity to London, but there might be places like York. It's not accessible, but you could actually have a northeastern hub hub that is accessible where you could do this. And I think once you do a few in Ipswich, you can replicate this in other cities. And all you have to do is basically find a city or a town and look at all the people around it that are concentrated to actually kind of market that out. But I think through Facebook groups, like it's minimal advertisements, right? Like that's something that's so minimal because there's so many Facebook groups and things like that that exist already. You could even go on Meetup, the website Meetup, and actually schedule something. To hire a dancer or like someone to provide a salsa dance lesson is not expensive. All in all, you're probably looking at a few hundred to do this yourself. A restaurant might even give you the space if you organize dinner with them. You know, like a lot of the times they have some space to do all of this. So you might also get something for free there. And you're just bringing people to it. So you're getting a community involved. Talk to your council because you're doing something like this, which is a cultural shift. It's a movement. A lot of councils will back you up and they'll give you grants. Being a female founder is another big angle. A lot of councils are getting behind that now.
How to reach these people? How can I get in touch with the council? Who is the department? And
Google. This is the life of a founder. All you have to do is get on the website, get on a council website, call them up and see who's responsible for cultural events in the city and get a hold of them there. Talk to your local councillors and MPs. They're responsive. It might take time, but like I said, this is not short term. Don't expect anything overnight. All of this is a long game. So you have to be in it for the long run once you decide what you want to do and really get it done. But get on the phone. There's so many people. Get on communities, get on LinkedIn, see who's part of this, who's more active, go to events hosted by the council to see who's active and then get a hold of them and do things. But you're also going to have to be a lot more proactive if there's a movement or a change that you want to bring about.
I'll just jump in there. Monica, we're closely linked to Ipswich Borough Council, so I can make introductions.
There you go.
Who fund us. And I actually advised Monica on the pop-up events sort of to get the name about and obviously validate the idea. So we'll talk afterwards, Monica.
This is a very good example of a discussion between founders and investors where suddenly from a single idea you build and now supposing, Monica, you did all the things that Kari has suggested. In 6 months, let's say you've done 2 or 3 events and you have a good idea of how much it cost and what the demand was, what sort of numbers are showing, what sort of profitability. Now, suddenly, if you came to us, say 6 months from now, 9 months from now and say, hey, do you remember I was talking about this? This is what I've done. Now we can have an investor discussion based not on an idea, but it's something that you've actually demonstrated that I've gone and done this. I staged 3 events, 4 events. This was the demand. This is the revenue we generated. This was how much profit we made. Then an investor suddenly starts believing in the idea. Like I said, hey, there is a York chapter of this. There is an Ipswich chapter. There's a London. There's a Cardiff. The vision becomes bigger. It suddenly takes a life from a single conversation. It keeps building and building and building. And this is what investors are looking for is how big could this be? Is this a single venue concept, in which case there's limited funding going to be available? But if you tell me there could be 10 chapters over the UK, they could be as far as the Orkney Islands, right down to Plymouth, to Cardiff, to Devon, and they could all be doing different things because you've got a formula now. You know how to tell people how to build these little pockets of communities. Let's face it, I think the thing that's driving all of us and what's of interest to our communities. Mm-hmm. How do we build communities that are functional, they contribute, people enjoy being a part of them? Let's face it, we're all in fear of losing this, that we don't feel we connect enough with people, we don't go out. We know who we know, but we don't know the people we don't know. And I think in life, you want to get to know people and exchange ideas and visions, whatever, with people you don't know, because we're in the process of learning. Today, I hope, Kari, we can cover a little bit of AI. It'll be interesting to see what people's ideas and what people are thinking about AI in terms of what they're doing as well.
And then, at the end of the day, for you to say that, well, how do I go about doing this? Every single day, you're going to have to consciously go out of your comfort zone. You're going to have to send those cold emails to people on LinkedIn. You're going to have to pick up the phone. And this is where the resilience and grit comes in. Having a thick skin, people are going to reject. But listen, that one person who says yes can completely turn the tide. But 6 months later, if all you've said is no, then goes back to customer validation that maybe this is just not an idea that's selling. And maybe, you give yourself that much time. And if you're not getting anywhere, maybe it's time to move on.
Yeah, true.
Hope that helps.
Thank you very much.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Nicola, what are you working on?
There's a sort of a bit of frisson with the beginning of the Pepe Jeans in that somebody has taken the sheet out from underneath me, but it wasn't my thing to begin with. I've developed a survey to support Key Stage 2, which is 7 to 11-year-olds, to express how they feel. This is an en masse thing. This does not require adult intervention. In fact, it's designed for no adult intervention. This is for children to answer by themselves for themselves. This was developed with funding from the Ipswich Opportunity Area, which came from the Department for Education, and a local community interest company called Health Watch Suffolk. They've had significant funding cuts. As a result, this area of their work, which is with regard to health and social care, is being dropped. It was always a bit of a sideline. It always felt like it didn't really quite fit. As the employee that basically designed it from scratch, I'm also being dropped, but that's fine. That's okay. And so in a moment of cheekiness, when this was all coming up, I said, well, can I have it? Can I take it with me? I'm absolutely gobsmacked that they said yes. And so I now have again, if you're allowed to drop the F-bomb, Kari, I'm allowed to reflect my inner panic in a kind of like, holy shit, what do I do now? I don't know. I am passionate. I think this is a valuable thing. I do have a history of it existing and schools getting involved. There's all sorts of stuff around it, but I actually taking moments to reflect on that. I am not a resilient person. I am moderately thick-skinned. I can take the no's that I have had from the cold calling of people to get involved.
Can I ask you what's your background?
Graduated many years ago with a psychology degree. I worked in software project management. I then took more years than I think most everybody else would recommend to raise 3 daughters, have come back into education with a master's in linguistic studies, and now I'm with Emmanuel doing data science and artificial intelligence. I am passionate about research. I have been a school governor since the year 2000. I am very passionate about going into school and the children knowing who I am, interacting with me, talking to me, being at their level.
So you said you're not resilient. Bloody hell. I mean, what you've done is kind of quite the opposite, isn't it? Okay, so why are 7 to 11-year-olds, you're very age specific here. Is this where a big problem lies? Do you see a big area here that's neglected by schools, by parents? What's driving you to identify this age bracket?
It mostly came out of the sort of recommendations with the work for the Ipswich Opportunity Area, but actually in engaging with it, it's apparent that this is an age group that great many organisations, especially those that support health and well-being and mental health and well-being, don't want to talk to children because children are scary. You have to do a lot of stuff to make sure you protect them and protect yourselves. And just developing something to actually ask children questions is a big deal. And most ethics and everything will go, oh, if we're involving children, that complicates things so much. So generally, we just don't bother asking. We'll ask their teachers and we'll ask their parents. That'll be fine because they're adults and we can interact with them with the sort of methodology that we know of for where we're safe.
So basically, you're saying both on the parental level and school level, it's a failure because they really don't want to tackle it. Okay.
It's not parents and schools because they know the individuals. It's when you scale that up to system provision. It's institutions that exist within society and community. So it's provision of services from doctors, from healthcare, from psychologists, from government. It's being able to say, or even just from like the local authority, look, children are going through a lot. We put a lot of expectation on them. They put a lot of expectations on themselves that they learned from societal pressures. They don't necessarily have the skills to be able to deal with that, but they often have the skills to communicate something about where those pressures are coming from and how they feel about it. And it's saying, okay, if we tackle it early, if we go prevention rather than cure, it's a lot less expensive.
All right, so we can see there is a problem that's not being addressed properly. What is your solution towards this? How are you proposing that 7 to 11-year-olds can be best addressed or helped?
If we know where the problems are, we can try and target the solutions to address them.
So do you have anything specific that you think goes towards this?
I have designed a set of classroom activities that go with, well, it's a whole package.
Okay, so that's really your business solution, is that I see this problem and I've designed some classroom activities that actually address this problem specifically. Is that how I understand it? Am I correct?
Yeah. Probably.
This is not about scaling it. It's basically identifying initially a problem exists. We need to come up with a solution. The solutions that exist aren't coping with the problem, but you have tackled it from the point of view of coming up with specific ideas and activities and exercises that go towards addressing this. And if you were to kind of put it into some sort of a format that you could present to people to say, this is how I think we can address this problem. Is this something that you think would receive positive acceptance from local authorities, educational authorities, who appear to be the obstacle to this problem?
Don't know, is my honest answer.
That's okay. A lot of problems don't have immediate solutions. And that's what entrepreneurship is all about, is to say, is there a problem? We always say, is there a problem to begin with? We're not identifying a solution for a problem that doesn't exist. We're looking for a solution for a problem that exists. If you ask yourself the same questions to say, who do I need to address this to? If I've thought about it and this problem exists, it does exist, it's not in my mind. Therefore, I need to find people who are going to be open to discussing this. At this stage, are you saying you need funding to take this forward? Or is it just an ear? Do you need somebody to just listen to you?
At this stage, it is more the ear. It's not the funding. How do I need to think about this to potentially transition it to being something? Because it does already exist. It isn't a business proposal.
Nicola, can you identify stakeholders? Like, imagine you have this business already in place. Who are your stakeholders here?
Schools and local authorities. By schools, I also include trusts, academy trusts. It's also anybody that provides health and social care to this age group.
But on the other flip side of it, these would be your clients in a way, right?
Yeah.
The problem you're solving for are the carers, guardians, and parents of these kids.
Yes, and the children themselves. It is,
Correct.
yes.
They're not at that age able to answer. So I think what you would do is get guidance from the parents.
That's fundamentally the challenge point here, is that no, actually, the whole point of what I've done, and maybe I'm just too close to it, is
See-
that the children do speak for themselves.
No, I mean, you'd have to go through the parents, because at that age, you won't have direct access to the kid without the parents' approval. So that's what I'm trying to get at. But what I'm trying to say is, going back to our second point in this entire discussion, is market research. Have you spoken to these parents?
Some.
Can you conduct an entire survey that you spoke to 50 parents? These were my questions, and this is the feedback I've gotten. Can you do something like that?
I could, yes. I haven't, because at the minute I'm through schools. But yes, we could.
Same thing I said to Monica. What if we flip this to the other side? What if you actually, because remember, in today's day and age, data is king. Go out and speak to as many people as you can. Reach out to your friends, reach out to your family. I'm part of a mom's group that has like almost 300 moms in there. You can send me a link if you create a survey, and I'll pass it on to these people. What I'm trying to say is, you need data to support that what you're doing is necessary. And I think
Which I have from the children, but I don't have from parents. Because
No.
I have 3 years worth of data.
Correct. But what I'm saying is, like, what you need to do is combine them both, right? And then if I were you, and I'm just going to tell you whatever, if I were you, this is what I would do. I would go to the parents and get data. I would collate all the information you already have from the last 3 years. I would create an actual report from an authority standpoint. And then I would publish this report and send it out to schools and local authorities and anyone who provides health and social care, like you identified, the stakeholders that will benefit from this report. And I think that's how you can start to get people to talk about this. If I were you, I would do it this way.
Yeah, that's already there.
You have a report in place?
There are 2 reports already exist for the past 2 years worth of data. This is the thing. It's sort of there, and it kind of exists, and it sort of stands out within the organization that created it.
Not the organization. I'm saying you need to publish it. You need to write it, and you need to extrapolate 35 kids identify with XYZ. Parents' biggest problem is this. Like, you need to extrapolate headlines that'll grab attention. Education in this country is so archaic. They're very slow to adopt any change or speak to anyone. If you just start talking about this on LinkedIn, I bet you no expectations in return, just talking this out. Get your data and do it, because no one can challenge the stuff you've done. You're not taking someone else's study. This is your entire study. You own that data. You own that material. If you just start making noise on this on your own on LinkedIn, I 100% guarantee you will get responses, because what you want to do is position yourself where you are seen as authority on that topic.
Absolutely. You have to own this space, Nicola.
Yes.
You have to be seen as the person that knows what they're talking about, and therefore they come to you knowing that you've got data to support this, you've done some work behind it, and now suddenly you start getting attention. And that's what you want. You want to create that momentum, and then from there you take the other steps that you know are going to lead to the outcome that you want, which is to address this problem.
But investors is not the first thing. You're going to even have to convince them, not for something like this. This is why I was asking, who are your stakeholders, right? Who are everyone that are involved in this? Who are you trying to solve this problem for? Identify all those people, collate something, create a report for yourself. Reports are so telling. You don't need a lot. You just need 50 to 75 people. That's it. That's all the sample size you need. More, the better, but that should be enough for you to gather some information.
Okay, great. I just wanted to ask everybody here, how many are actually on LinkedIn?
Yes, I'm on LinkedIn as well.
One of the areas that founders are poor at and you need to work on is network, building your network. LinkedIn is a really good starting place that you look at the areas that are specifically interest you, find out who on LinkedIn is in that specific area, connect with them. Don't worry about sending a cold invite to people. Sometimes you'll get an acceptance, sometimes not, but from their connections that lead you to other people in a similar space as well. And the other thing is to attend as many tech events, startup events, talking to other founders about their journeys, about what they're experiencing. This is hugely beneficial. Today, we've listened to Nicola's story, Jacob's story, Monica's story. These are very common founder stories. I'm thinking of this. My next stage is this. Okay, so Emmanuel's saying, when do I abandon the project? Why is 24 months? Is that written in stone? And we're saying no, but it's a milestone that we think is important. So these conversations are giving hopefully all of you today insights into the sort of thinking that leads to better outcomes for entrepreneurs. That means profitable businesses, sustainable businesses, but it gives you an insight into the investor lens. What are we specifically looking at? What questions do we think are relevant when we're assessing the ability to invest? We're asking for people to invest with us. So we have to be extremely cautious about what decisions we're taking as to why are we investing with Jacob? What has he got that nobody else has got? Has he got an insight that people have missed out on totally? And we're the first ones to recognize it, and we believe in what he's doing. What Nicola and Emmanuel doing something of value? We're not looking for unicorns in everything, okay? A good business could be 50 million, 100 million, 10 million. But even a $10 million business, it has to be profitable. If it's profitable, the investor can't get something out of it. As angel investors, our mindset is not just making capital available, but is to ask tough questions, listen, give advice where it helps, and then totally to get out of the founder's way. We don't believe in micromanaging. We don't look at being operational in any sense. Our value add as investors is both a strategy and operational, and our network. So the most valuable thing you can do at this stage, at this very early stage, is build out your network. Connect with as many people as you possibly can in the vertical that you specialize in. And from time to time, I come across people on my network that have nothing to do with what I'm doing, but I find them very interesting in terms of their careers or the business idea that they have, and I connect with them. If I'm lucky, I get to meet and speak to them. Join as many societies as you can. Go to things that you're not familiar with. Throw yourself out there. 90% of success, and I believe this very firmly, is just showing up. You're open to opportunities. If you're hiding away, from time to time, we get requests for pitch decks, and they go, will you sign an NDA? And an NDA is a non-disclosure agreement. And my stock answer is, do you know how many pitch decks we look at on a yearly basis? And I guarantee you about 10 of them will have the same idea that you've got. Therefore, I cannot sign this thing for you. You're not the only person in the world to have come up with this idea. Somebody Everybody out there has done something similar. Nicola, your idea of tackling this particular area, I was at a barbecue on Sunday with lots of young kids around me. And when you watch their behavior patterns and everything, these kids are so smart and so quick and so fast on everything. I wonder if my parenting skills would match their needs today. Probably not. You know, it's fascinating to see how quickly kids are developing. And I think there are 7 and 14-year-olds who hold the key to our future. They are going to be coming up with the ideas, the things that are driving us forward. AI today is a big talking point. It's nothing to be scared of or fear. There are good user cases for AI, definitely. And there will be bad actors that appear that take advantage of it. But then we've had bad actors all the time in tech. Okay, they've appeared from time to time. They do their things. They do their hacking, whatever. They've got amazing tech skills, which if they earn an honest living, they'll be fabulous at it. You know, they come from maybe a background that discourages this, and you're taught to earn money a dishonest way. We're looking at founders like yourselves who hold the future. You know, you have a stake in the future. You have to be serious about what you're going to contribute as entrepreneurs to the world going forward. I think we've had our successes in our lifetimes, and we're grateful for it. But Kari and I are sort of saying we want to share not how successful we were, but what we learned from that. Failures as well. There's going to be failures, and you will all have some measure of failure along your journey. But don't be scared about it. It's normal. What you've got to say is, I'm learning from this. You know, you have to learn from your failures, and those failures are big object lessons in what you're going to do better in the future.
I know we're kind of like at the end of it, but both Emmanuel and Phyllis, Farook, do you have a few minutes if we were to quickly address their questions?
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
Go ahead.
I was going to just share my idea, but I don't think we have time for that. But maybe
Do it.
just
Quick.
Oh, okay, thank you. So what's the best way to approach a model in which your user is not the same as your paying customer? For instance, you're targeting, say, teenagers that are not making money yet, you know, and then you want their parents to pay you for them. I am an international student. I've only been in Ipswich for about 8 months. Right. And a lot of times when I walk on the streets in Ipswich, I see a lot of teenagers, right? A lot of times as well, you see them either fighting or seeing a situation where some of them were smoking, drinking, you know, being rude, basically. I see that as a problem, but I didn't pay much attention to it. I now realized that, okay, so this is actually a very big problem for a lot of people, right? So I thought about the idea of creating a spot where young people can just come, just do something that they all love to do together.
That already exists in so many forms. Let's not focus on the problem here. You need to be able to really market this to the parents in the right way. So your parents are really your customer, not the kids.
So what is the best way to approach this? Does it mean I have to strictly target the parents, you know, even though I want the teenagers to be my users?
I mean, a lot of problems, a lot of really great entrepreneurs start their businesses out of need. Where do you sit here? Because you don't have a teenager kid, you're not a parent yet. So it's difficult to relate to something like that. Is it a more socially driven cause? And that's valid too. I mean, if I were you, I wouldn't market this in a way where I would say that I want to eliminate rudeness or I want to challenge them somewhere else. I wouldn't do that. What I would say is that you can talk about the benefits of mental health. You could talk about the benefits of actually taking them and channeling their skills into something else and market it that way, because you also want the parents to get excited about something. No one wants to see the flaw in their own kid. As rude as my kid may be, I don't want to believe that my kid's rude, and I wouldn't want to put them into something for that purpose. If you say that, you know, on an average, a child has 5 hours a week and it leads to XYZ, which is unproductive. However, we have a platform we've created for kids to engage in ABC, and the results of this are EFG. Do you know what I mean? In our chats, Uba really pointed out something really good, that you actually have to productize this to actually be able to market and sell it. So exactly what is your product here, right? Like, it's a platform of activities that you're trying to engage in. It's no different than to what we suggested to Nicola. Market research with the parents. What are they looking for? What actually gets them triggered enough to sign up with something like a service that you're providing? Sorry, I just want to quickly, I've got to jump onto something else. I just want to quickly go to Phyllis.
Okay, so I'll make this very quick. Thank you so much for having me first. So I do have an idea that I was hoping to just get a little bit of advice. So my background is on sustainability. Past 5 years, I've been working in the Global South because I come from Kenya, which is part of East Africa, working with business, that is the entrepreneurs, as well as the leaders, in matters sustainability. How can we promote sustainable business practices and also focus on our leaders who are key in terms of promoting sustainability? So having that experience in the Global South, I thought of bringing it as well, and having a connection between Europe or the UK, in particular, the Global South. How can we bring together leaders and entrepreneurs in terms of creating sustainable business practices? Because I've also noted in business, some of the businesses here that I've interacted with, in their mission and vision, they do have, yes, we are promoting sustainability, but on the ground you will find that customers are not really willing to accept some of these sustainable practices, or they also do not understand why the businesses are taking the measures that they're doing. So having such an idea, I have been struggling just a little bit here. My questions, I've been struggling a little bit with, how can I effectively communicate such an idea to an investor? Because if you're bringing together leaders and entrepreneurs, you might not be able to make sales, so to speak. At the moment, I feel like I do not know how to monetize it and make it attractive to an investor, especially specifically looking at sales. So that is the first question. How can I effectively communicate this? And also, does it make any business sense in terms of bringing the two together? Should I just focus on the UK first and then bring the connection with the Global South? Or can I be able to, make sense in terms of bringing the Global South together with the UK?
From what I gather, isn't the boot camp that the university is setting up specifically to address these questions?
I haven't come across it, unfortunately.
I would speak with Amy because I think, from my conversations with Amy, this is exactly what you guys are supposed to go through. So we were just supposed to kind of introduce the boot camp today, talk about the essentials that are needed to get in front of an investor. Amy then takes care of this boot camp in like 2 or 3 weeks. We're talking about actually how to get pitch ready. So we talk about the essentials of actually pitching to an investor. Everything that you've talked about here, Phyllis, in the middle is something that Amy will be covering in that boot camp. So make sure you grab a spot there.
I just want to say I'm Kenya born. I was born in Nairobi, so Jambo.
Jambo.
Like Kari explained, I think the bootcamp will answer a lot of your questions in how to address the investor questions. I think you'll get a lot from that.
Do come back in a couple of weeks. I think 2 or 3 weeks. We're actually going to be talking about pointers on how to actually get pitch ready. What is essential in your pitch deck and how you actually go in front of your fundraising journey. What do you need to look at? And that's kind of to cap off this boot camp. And so we're kind of like the end again after everything you learn on this boot camp.
Well, awesome. Thank you.
No, thank you guys. It was really good to be here. Thank you, Farook, for being here. Thank you to everyone who've actually attended. Pretty good crowd.
Okay, lovely. Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Thank
Amy.
you so much, Farook and Kari. That's so insightful and interesting.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks everyone.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.